What's going on? I'm going to be going over Silver Falls Frontier Fighters Mini. It's a game that was specifically made for retro emulation handhelds like the RG350 and Retroid Pocket 2. It's an RPG Maker game, so I'll show you how to get that on your consoles, and then I'll go over some other good RPG Maker games that I found. If you enjoy tech, retro gaming, or EDC, feel free to check out my other videos, and consider subscribing as only about 10% of my viewers are subscribed. But for now, let's get into the video. For the game itself, it's a turn-based survival horror game set in the Silver Falls franchise universe. This game is sort of a retelling of the first game on the 3DS, 3 Down Stars, which was an action survival horror game. It plays similar to something like Resident Evil Revelations and looks pretty good being on the new Nintendo 3DS, so it's one to check out. It does have spoilers for that, but it isn't told in great detail and some of it is skippable. So if the lore does interest you enough to try the 3DS game, it'll still be fresh enough, you'll just have a bit of an overview. As for this game though, Frontier Fighters Mini, it's free and all you need to do is go to the game's website and there's a download link. I'll have that linked in the description. And while you're there, consider checking out the other games they have. This series is pretty cool to me because all the mainline games are third-person action horror, but all the side games are different types of gameplay, such as the Game Boy game that I covered a few months ago. It's like a top-down adventure game. But for this game, the download has everything you need in order to play it wherever you want. For the RG350 and the Android versions, it includes the easyRPG emulator to play it. And for other consoles like the RG351, you just have to have an operating system with RetroArch core for easyRPG, such as ArcOS. If you need instructions on how to install it on the RG350, I'll have a video as an annotation that shows how. For the beginning of Frontier Fighters Mini, you get a brief introduction into the story and some of the characters of 3 Down Stars, and this takes maybe an hour or so to beat, and then you get into the real part of the game. For this beginning part, it's pretty easy and gets you accustomed to the way the game plays, at a basic level with the turn-based battles and the action points to use skills. For the look of the game, I think it's done very well, and it reminds me a lot of PS1 games with the pre-rendered backgrounds of that era. To me, it suits the game very well and gives off just the right tone. After the intro is complete, you're taken to a camp, which is the hub of the game. This part feels similar to the way Resident Evil Revelations did it in their Mercenaries mode. This is also the same hub that's in the 3DS game's battle mode. Here you can choose your party of 4 characters that you want to take into battle, in which there are 11 playable characters to unlock. There are vending machines to buy health, status, and combat items to help you fight through the levels of enemies. You can earn tokens by defeating the enemies and completing missions. There is an upgrade station to increase the stat boosts for some of your equipment items to help characters beyond leveling them up. There's a training area as well, presumably to level up your characters without going into battle, but unfortunately when I tried to use this feature, it would freeze the game for me, so hopefully this is something that will be fixed in a future update, as it seems like a good feature. There's a place that tells you about the skills and abilities for each character so that you can use them more efficiently. There's a spot in the hub that tells you about the different games in the franchise. And lastly is the spot to choose which mission to go on, and then the spot to leave. For the missions after the intro, there are 7 different ones to choose from, with 4 different difficulties. This gives the game a pretty decent amount of replayability, especially if you want to level up a lot of the characters, as switching difficulties increases by quite a bit, so it's best to play through the missions in order to level correctly. Each mission has a good amount of replayability too, as the enemies are random and give a pretty good challenge if you don't just sprint to the end of the level as quick as possible. For the enemies, there seems to be a good variety of them, from mutated animals such as wolves, rabbits, crows, and more, to mutants that are just a head or headless mutant with multiple arms. They each cause different status effects to the player characters like poison, freeze, wet, and more. And you will need to stock up on items to cure these to succeed. Now onto the battle system. Personally, I haven't played a ton of turn-based games. When I was younger, I couldn't really get into them, but now as I've grown older, I have more of an appreciation for them. That's just to let you know to take my opinion on turn-based games with a grain of salt, but in my opinion, Frontier Fighters Mini does combat really well. It is meter-based, so each character has a meter that has to fill up before they can take an action. There are 5 different actions a character can take during their turn. Strike, which is just a basic attack. Shoot, you use your long-range weapon to make an attack. Skill, which activates different abilities. Follow-up, which is gained by using different skills per character to do big damage. And item, which can be health, status, or combat items. Most actions require action points to use, which you gain by using certain other actions, such as Strike, which gains you 1 action point. Each character has an action that they can use that will give them additional action points in turn. For Holt, his Strike will give you 2 additional action points. These additional action points make it so you are able to do large amounts of damage to enemies and clear them out. I think it makes for a pretty good combat system that doesn't take a lot to learn, but has a good amount of depth to it to make it pretty fun. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses. For Holt, he has a really good melee attack, but his meter gain is slower than some of the others. And Soldier the dog has really quick meter gain, but doesn't have a lot of health. Each character that I have used feels pretty unique compared to the others. Plus, there's still a lot that I haven't tried yet. It seems to play really well on all the systems that I have, so you should be able to enjoy it anywhere. There are additional animations on the Windows version played through the RPG Maker, which is cool, but they aren't necessary to enjoy the game. I recently got the RG351V, so I'll be doing a review on that soon. If that's something that interests you, consider subscribing so you don't miss it. And I also got the Pocket Go S30, so I'll most likely be taking a look at that as well. Through my game time, I did find a couple glitches that you might want to be aware of. First off is the training area that just froze the game for me, at least on the RG350. For normal mode, if you try to play on town, it isn't playable because when you leave the second area, it just takes you back to the first area, and this just happens over and over. And the last one that I found, which is the least game breaking, is sometimes the wrong background pops up during the battles. Overall, I've been enjoying the game and definitely think it's worth checking out if you're looking for a turn-based game with some cool characters and lore. If you end up enjoying it, check out the devs' other games on Nintendo Switch, 3DS, and Game Boy, as they all seem pretty good. I'm actually considering streaming the Switch game, Eps Prelude, here soon. I've played through some of it, and so far it's pretty good. I'll have my Twitch linked in the description, and I'll probably be announcing it on Twitter as well. So if you want to follow me on either of those to get notified when I stream it. Checking this game out made me find out that there's an RPG Maker emulator for these different consoles. So I've looked into some of the other games that seem like they'd be fun to play through. So here's some more recommendations that I found. I'm gonna go over these pretty quick as I haven't played these very much. First up is Chocobo Panic Space. It's a Pac-Man style game with Chocobos as the main characters. The goal is to collect all the crystals in a stage and avoid enemies and traps to proceed to unlock more stages. Next up is Desert Nightmare, which is a story-based survival horror game. Taking place somewhere in California, the game follows Sandra Richmont, who was traveling with her parents to visit their uncle. After an argument when they stopped in a town, her parents appeared to have driven off without her. Thinking her parents planned to stay overnight in the nearest city, Dusty Creek, Sandra heads towards there. However, after meeting 2 others that are stranded, she realizes that they are trapped in the city and has some dark secrets. The gameplay consists of solving puzzles and adventure gameplay. This one is Grimm's Hollow. It's a short and sweet RPG experience telling the story of a girl who dies and transforms into a reaper. She tries to find her lost brother and return to the living world. This one has a pretty cool art style and seems to be pretty good. This one is Off, and in Off you take control of a mysterious person called the Batter, who is described to be on an important mission. The Batter and yourself as his controller are dropped into Zone 0, the first of 4 zones in an unknown world, which you find out more about as you continue through the game. It's a puzzle RPG game that is fairly difficult and has a very unique style. And lastly is Final Fantasy Blackmoon Prophecy. It's a more classical RPG Maker experience that is meant to emulate the first 6 Final Fantasy games, combining the best things about the games into one. That was the retro emulation handheld console exclusive, Silver Falls Frontier Fighters Mini. Let me know what you thought of the game, and do you plan to check it out, or any other ones I mentioned? And let me know of any other RPG Maker games worth it in the comments. If you enjoyed, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe for more tech and gaming videos. Thanks for watching.
Oh, I potatoed that.
I potatoed it more.
This is what I do.
I'm good here. Oh, Dahlia's here. I traded. One's low. They're reviving Dahlia on this corner.
I should pick up the grenade.
Okay,
Nice.
that worked.
Hey, how you doing?
Their own grenade worked against them.
Took you long enough.
Don't buy a pistol round, guys. That's why you don't buy a pistol round.